Welcome to Your Financial Advocate with Greg DuPont from DuPont Wealth Solutions. As a practicing advisor and attorney, Greg teaches pre-retirees how to reduce debt and taxes and save with less risk so they have more spendable income and plan their way to a better life. Join us for this journey where Greg draws on years of experience and guest experts to help listeners achieve more spendable income for retirement.
Hello and welcome to Your Financial Advocate with Greg DuPont of DuPont Wealth Solutions. Greg, how are you?
I'm doing great, Eric. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm so excited. I met your guest a little bit before we started recording today, and it's going to be a great interview. Who did you bring on the show?
So, Eric, I'm proud to bring onto our conversation today Dr. Bimbo Welker. You know, when I gave my team a charge that I wanted to, bring more color to our conversations here, instead of just talking finances all the time, I wanted to look a little bit more into some people that are getting it done one way or the other in their world. And Meredith, my community outreach director, said, "Oh, I got the perfect guy." And that is Dr. Bimbo Welker. And so when I started talking to her a little about the story that he's going to share with us today, the more I realized that, yep, she was spot on with this. So, Dr. Welker, thank you for joining us here today and coming on and have a little conversation.
My pleasure.
So I'd just like to start by my understanding of your background a little bit. 30 odd years at The Ohio State University as a director of veterinary medicine or something of that nature. And now you're out in private practice. So is that a pretty good summary of that? Tell me a little bit about your background.
Well, I'm actually a graduate of Texas A&M, and I actually fell into an internship back in 1980 at Ohio State University. Totally by accident, because nobody from Texas wants to leave Texas. So, in fact, when they offered it to me, I had to get a map out and find out where Ohio was. But we bid it off, and it was only going to be a one-year gig. We came up here for the 1 year, and then I got offered a residency and stayed another 3 years. And then I kind of liked academia, so I went to Virginia Tech, actually, for 7 years and ran their large animal surgery section. And then I got called back to Ohio State for an interview to run the place in Marysville, actually. So I was there for 28 years, and now I'm on my own.
Now you're on your own. And that's the interesting thing that I really want to focus on going forward, because what we do in my practice, I'm a estate planning financial advisor kind of guy. But my bottom line is that I tell people all the time that our mission is so that your money supports your life in the way that you want to live it. And I talk a lot on this program and in other speaking opportunities about some of the changes that are going on in the world, the health, longevity, all those kind of things, and how people need to just kind of take another look at the traditional way of I'm working till retirement at 65 and I got my paychecks going forward, Social Security. And I feel like you're kind of a great example of what I like to call a kind of a second life. After you left Ohio State, now you're out there with your own private practice and getting it done that way. And so, I just kind of would like to hear from you what life is like now for you now that you're in this kind of a quasi retirement where you've moved from the academic world to being on your own and out there as a solo vet out there.
Well, the actual practice part of it is the same, but branching off and doing my own thing has been an eye opener. Like I mentioned to you before, students used to ask me all the time about, what does it take to start up a practice? And I would make up some stuff because I didn't have any idea, because I was in academia all those years. Now I can tell them the answer. And what a ride it's been. I've only been doing this for 3 years by myself, and was quite the eye opener to what you have to do to get set up just to run the practice the way you have to run it as a solo practitioner anyway.
There's a learning curve on there, isn't there?
Oh, big learning curve. And in my case, it was a fast learning curve because I had about 2 weeks from the retirement from Ohio State to hitting the road, because I wanted to keep running. And so I had to get all my ducks in a row in that short 2 week window of opportunity.
Now, with as we talked a little bit about before the program, you've got family and obligations that were part of the decision. That hey, I couldn't just hang up my shingle or stop practicing. I can go to retirement. Yeah. What was your thought when you started this business versus what it is now? How's it look different?
Well, I didn't have any idea how fast it would grow. And I'm happy about that, by the way, how fast I could get on my feet and start running without any assistance whatsoever. If my wife hears this, she's not going to agree because she's done a lot to help me out. But having to learn all the basic stuff about running a business in a short window of opportunity was a big deal. But now that I've done it, I would tell anybody that was starting on their own that you should do it the way I did it, which is do everything. Because that way, when you hire somebody on, you know how to tell them what to do or what the nuts and bolts are. And so I don't mind it now that it's 3 years later and I've got a kind of pattern going. But first 6 months was pretty hectic trying to learn how to do all the things that I had to do to run the business.
Now, as we talked about before or going on air, it's something you've loved every step along the journey.
Absolutely.
Is there something that you find particularly energizing now versus maybe in the last few years of working at the Ohio State University?
Oh, absolutely. The most energizing thing is the money. It's a whole different ballgame when you work for yourself. The impetus has always been taking care of my cases and taking care of my clients has always been the same. But now the reward is that the harder I work, the more I benefit from it. And that's been the thing that's the biggest difference anyway.
So when you started thinking about, okay, I've got to start this thing from scratch. What kind of steps did you take along that path to going from, okay, I've been in charge of this internally with really kind of business coming to us because of what the mothership does to, okay, I've got to go out and I've got to get this started. I'm bootstrapping this thing. What kind of first steps did you take on that journey?
Well, I had to go to the bank to get some business loans, and I'd never had to do that before. I mean, when you work for the big mothership, they take care of all that for you. So I had to go to the bank. To go to the bank, you have to have the information necessary to allow them to want to loan you money to get started. And I can tell you also, I'm happy to tell you that I've had to use very little, if any, of their loan money because as the business took off, it took off well enough that it supported what I had to pay my vendors anyway. The interesting thing was, if I was going to sit here with somebody, I would tell them, these are the pieces of information you have to have in front of you to go to the bank, to go to the vendors, to go into the labs to get set up with accounts. It's a lot of numbers that you have to have in front of you to get that started. So when I talk to young people now, I tell them you got to have your tax ID number, you have to have your DEA license, you have to have your accreditation numbers, you have to have all kind of numbers in front of you before you can go to those different people to set up accounts just to get started. And I didn't have any idea because my secretaries with the mothership did all that for me when I was running the practice before.
So you had zero really experience of running a business.
Zero. Even though I was the director of the practice, I had all these people and staff that were available to, I could walk in the office and say, get this done, and it would get done. I tell the people that used to work for me all the time now, I say, I knew I appreciated you before, but I had no idea how much because now it's all on me. Every little detail was on me to try to figure out how to do it. And don't get me wrong, I can make a phone call to one of those and they would help me, figure out how to get started with it. But that was the hardest part is all the stuff you have to get lined up in order just to get started, if with nothing else, vendors to purchase drugs to get started with the business anyway.
So I'm curious, when you were at Ohio State, how much longer did you think that you were going to work at that point in time before you had to make the change? I mean, how had you planned retirement was 2 or 3 years away? What was your thought process at that point in time?
No, I probably didn't think that away. I probably was thinking more like 5 or 6 years away, something like that. I've got kids in college, so I had, I was going to work until I probably had to go. I wasn't looking forward to retirement because that's not the way I am. I like doing what I do so much. It's hard for me to see myself sitting around the house or doing something else. And I've got hobbies like golf, but I'm not good at it. So I'm not going to play that all day long either. So, and my wife's a veterinarian and she works. And so she's not anywhere near retirement. So I don't know what I would do, but I enjoy what I do.
Yeah. So at this point in time, now that you are the captain of your own ship,
yep.
So if I do my math right, at that point in time, you were thinking about 5 years, you'd be looking retirement. So that'd be a couple of years from now, back
Correct.
in the day.
Yep.
And now, since you're captain of your own ship, you can work until you drop.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
And it sounds like something that you darn well may do. Work until you drop. Yeah,
that's exactly right. It's an amazing career. To get to do what I do. I don't, like I said, don't get me wrong. There's sometimes at 2:00 in the morning that I don't want to get up and go out, but for the most part, getting up in the morning and going to work is not a job. It's enjoyment anyway. What I like most about being a veterinarian is not the animals, it's the people. I enjoy the heck out of my clients. It's the best part about being a veterinarian. I help my clients by helping their animals.
Do you feel like, well, if you don't mind me asking, I've been kind of dancing around the issue. How old are you, Bimbo?
68.
68. So do you feel now that at 68, that working energizes you? Oh,
absolutely. Absolutely. Even on long holidays, if I have long holidays, I can't wait to get back because I'm excited about getting to go to work. Again, don't get me wrong. There are days when I'd rather sit in the house, like when it's 20 degrees outside or 20 below or snowing on me, that kind of stuff. I'd rather, by the way, be somewhere in the South where it's not cold. I don't like the cold.
Those Texas roots run deep, huh?
That's right. Exactly. It's a little hot down there, maybe somewhere between.
Yeah. So at 68, I'm sure you've got many contemporaries of yours that have retired.
They're falling like flies. They keep asking me what I'm doing, and I tell them I'm not ready yet. I got too much gas in the tank. But yeah, they're going out pretty fast. Yeah.
So yeah, I've mentioned on this podcast and to people, my daughter makes fun of me because I'm a firm believer in some of the advances of medication and treatment, and I believe I'm going to live to 150.
There you go.
And when you're living with that type of a time perspective. And you're doing something that you love what you do. I love what I do. You don't go to work a single day. You just do what you're enjoying. Yeah. And being able to continue doing that, it's a blessing. And it just keeps you energized.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I thought I was going to miss the most was the student contact. But I still have students with me. So I've got the best of both worlds now. So that's what a joy it's been all my career to teach. But now when I have people with me, they're there because they want to be. They're not there because they're going through a rotation. They've been a blast to teach. So I haven't missed out on that at all. I mean, there are days where I'm by myself now, but it's not very common. So I've got the best of both worlds. I get to teach and I get to run a business and make more money. So it's a pretty good deal.
Yeah. Yeah. Now the business is large animal veterinary.
Yes,
so my dog's 110 pounds. That doesn't count, right?
Well, remember what I said, if you can eat it or ride it, that's my motto. So I don't eat dogs. We don't eat dogs in this country. So I do a few farm dogs, but my wife's the small animal veterinarian. So if I get in a bind, I always got her to lean back on and say, hey, what do I do here? So, yeah, but I run food animal and equine is what I do. Mostly probably nowadays 70% horses and 30% cattle is probably where it's kind of settled out.
So what does that market look like? Are there lots of veterinary services for that market, or are there not many people that specialize in the large animals like that?
Yeah, it's getting worse all the time. I mean, I cover 16 counties on a routine basis. So people ask me what I do for a living. I tell them I'm a truck driver and I stop and look at animals occasionally. So a lot of driving because there's very few people that are doing the large animal, in particular the food animal component of it. There's more people doing horse stuff, but very few people that are wanting to come out of school and do food animal stuff. So yeah.
I've heard something, and you'd know the answer to this. And is it true that Ohio State's one of like only 4 veterinary schools, colleges? I heard some of them were like that.
Well, you mean in the country?
Yeah.
No, there's probably 32. I think
30.
that's what the last I saw anyway.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's still not many for all the people trying to go. So, maybe 1 out of 10 people actually gets in that applies.
Yeah, that seemed like an absurdly low number when I heard that. So, but even at 32, that's really low.
Yeah, really low.
So what does a day in your life look like now?
That's kind of an interesting one because my practice is, I think most people will refer to as a fire engine practice. I don't have a lot of routine clients that I go to on a scheduled basis. When I get up in the morning, my book might be a third of the half full, but by the end of the day, it's totally full. So if I put too many cases on the books the night before, I can't get to them all because of all the emergencies that come in. So I do a lot of emergency work, a lot of acute problems that need to be seen at any moment. So my clients are good about if I call them up and say, hey, I'm supposed to be out there today, but I'm getting beat up with emergencies. Can we bump to another day? Those people that I have on the books are things that can be rescheduled, and my clients are really good about that because they know that when their turn comes, if they need me, that I'll come their direction anyway. And that's what I like about it because I like variety, and this practice gives me lots of variety. I never know what I'm going to see on a day-to-day basis.
So what's next in your world? The growth and expansion, or keep it where it is? What do you have on the horizon? As
long as I can keep it under control. The last thing I want to do is get to a point where I can't help somebody out. And I'm not saying I'm near that point, but like the first year out, I had a really good year. My first year out, I was up 70% the next year, and it's continuing to grow. So at some point, I'll probably have to add on or expand or something like that. That's a tough one because in a practice like we have, it grows because of the relationship you develop with your clientele, and adding somebody new on, you've got to find somebody that has the same kind of perspective on how to take care of clients and stuff like that. So that's the hardest part. I've had students call me that are in practices saying, I'm getting ready to expand. What do I do? And I tell them, you got to find somebody with the same work ethic and somebody with the same similar personality, meaning that people call you back because they enjoy working with you most of the time. If it's a one-time deal, which I see a lot of those too, it's one thing. But my clients, hopefully they call me back because I provide them a service and they enjoy that that relationship that we have anyway. At least I do anyway.
Now, is it just you, or do you have another vet in your team?
No, just me. Okay. Just me. Just me. I'm the bookkeeper and I'm everything. And so I spend a lot of time in my truck on the phone doing the business part of it as I'm driving down the road. So if I were young, I probably would make this growth in a different direction. I mean, not a different direction, but I would definitely probably expand, probably think about building a clinic and stuff like that. But I don't know that I want that burden at this stage of my career. I enjoy what I do. I've run 2 practices for universities in my career, and I enjoy that part of it. But this is kind of a nice way to go. When I first got started this track, my wife and I went out and looked for an office space, just a small office space for equipment and for supplies. And we didn't pull the trigger on that. And I'm glad we didn't, because I'm sitting here in my office, which is in my house. And so when I get done at the end of the day, I'm here instead of being someplace else. And I like that aspect of it. I don't have to go someplace else to do the things that I do to get ready for tomorrow anyway.
So as we bring this in for a landing, the many people have spent their whole lives working in some type of corporate environment, maybe believing they've got a song they haven't sung yet, something that they want to do other than just stop working. Somebody that's considering that, they're now looking at the modern equivalent of the golden parachute, which is basically kicking the butt out the door, right?
Right.
And thinking, okay, what's my next chapter? What advice would you have for somebody that's thinking, I've always thought I wanted to do X as a business? What advice would you give them?
Do it. Don't hesitate. I mean, this is easy for me to say. I've got I'm in a business that there's a demand for, so I don't know how to answer that to somebody who's doing something other than veterinary medicine, but I can speak to my side of it. And that is, I wish I'd have done this a long time ago, not because I didn't have a great time with the university, but if it was going to happen, I wish it would have happened earlier so I could have benefited from it more from a monetary standpoint. But at some point, I'm going to have to start either slowing down or bring somebody on board just to make sure that I get the benefits of what I'm doing. My wife and I took the family on a family vacation a few weeks ago, and we were sitting on the beach, and she was talking about how much it was costing. I said, you know what? This is why we work. Don't worry about it. And I shouldn't have said that, by the way, because that opened up the floodgates. But yeah, yeah. But that's kind of the thing that I have to do at this stage of my career is remind myself that you have to enjoy the other parts of your life and mostly the family part of what's going on anyway. So yeah, but it's not hard. She enjoys what she does. I enjoy what I do. My kids are in college. If it had to happen, it happened at a perfect time in my life because, we're free to do whatever we want to do. And I always tell her, she's always worried about me being tired or overworked. And I said, if you want me to rest, you got to get me out of town because I can't say no on the telephone. So it's a great thing.
Yeah.
No complaints.
Well, I'd like to thank you for sharing your story with us. And before we wrap up here today, I always like to throw it over to Eric, who is my fly on the wall as we have these conversations, just to see if there's anything that he'd like to ask you, follow up, something that's piqued his interest along the way. So, Eric, anything from you?
Well, this has been fantastic. Thank you, Greg, for giving me the opportunity. I do have just a couple questions, and this is not a hint, suggestion, anything like that, Bimbo, but you talked about there's such high demand, right, for what you do, because not a lot of people are coming out and saying, hey, I want to work with this in this space. Have you thought about, or are you planning, and not anytime soon because you love what you do, but maybe a sale of your business, a transition to somebody who would fill the gap for your clients and their animals?
Absolutely. I have, if things go the way they're supposed to go, there is an individual that's in vet school now. He's a sophomore, and he's from this community. And I see that transition. He rides with me quite a bit anytime he can. And I keep telling him, you need to ride with me as much as you can so that my clients are saying, hey, where's that guy at? So that by the time that transition does have to occur, it'll be seamless. And that's really because I want to take care of my clients even when I'm gone. And he's a good kid. So that's what I see happen in the future is selling the practice to him and letting him take it from there. And he's interested. His wife's going to be a veterinarian too. So they're going to have a mixed animal practice.
Perfect.
It'll work out perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, just like you and your wife. That's fantastic. Because Greg and I have talked about this on the show before. I mean, he's obviously talked about it because of what he does. So I was just curious. I hadn't heard that part of the conversation yet. And the other thing I haven't heard about yet is a cow being tied to a car. I'm not sure. I heard there was a story behind that, and I just wanted to see if we could get that on the podcast.
Yeah. Well, if we didn't get started on those kind of stories, it would have been too bad. But yeah, the one that Meredith was talking about is actually her father-in-law. This has been a long time ago, but his father-in-law and mother-in-law used to raise Belgian blue cattle, which are double muscled, so they're big.
Yeah.
They look like Arnold Schwarzenegger on steroids. And when I first met them, I was just shooting the bull with them, and they were talking about how, I asked them if they ever had any trouble calving. He said, no, we don't have any trouble. Well, that got to be kind of an inside joke because, in fact, we had plenty of opportunities to go out there and practice with them. But I went out there one day and I said, "Hey, I haven't seen you in a while, Dave." I said, "How things going?" He said, "I got one more heifer to calve out and we'll be done. And she's not due for a couple of weeks." And I said, "Okay." I got home 10 o'clock that night. He calls me up and said, "You remember that heifer I was telling you about?" And he said, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, she's out there and she's having trouble calving." I said, "Okay." So I went by, picked up my crew. We went out to his house and he's out in the country, right? And I'm in front of his house and I said, "Where's she at?" And he pointed across the road, which is this black abyss. It was pitch dark and it was a big open pasture. And I said, "Well, what's your plan?" He says, "I don't know. I don't have a plan." There was no set of pins in there to catch the cow. And he said, "And she's crazy." I said, "Okay." So I told my students and his wife to stay there. And I said, "Dave, bring your flashlight and let's see if we can find her." And I pulled my rope out of my truck. I rope calves. I mean, I rodeo for a living, right? So I pulled my rope out of my truck and we start out through this black abyss. And he's got that flashlight on. And I said, "Turn that light off, Dave. I can't see it. My eyes won't adjust." And so he turns it off. In a little while, you see the silhouette of this cow with two legs sticking out the back. So, I knew that was a cow, but she's like wired. You can see her looking for something going on. And about the time that I was trying to figure out what to do, he had a pet Jersey. And this Jersey comes walking up to us. And I said, "Dave, you stay here." And I just walked beside this Jersey like a stealth, like an Indian. Okay. And this is a true story. When I stopped, I was standing directly behind the cow. She didn't know I was there. I'm standing right behind her. I could have reached out and grabbed the calf by the legs and gone skiing through the pasture, but I had my rope in my hand. And I thought, okay, I got one shot here. And when I made my move, she jumped and I roped her hind legs. And I'm hanging on for dear life, hollering, "Dave, Dave, Dave." And he's running through the pasture with the flashlight looking for me. And he finally spots me. And he's a big guy. We pulled her down to the ground and hollered. The truck came. We tied the cow to the bumpers of the trucks out in the middle of the pasture and did a C-section out there by the headlights of the truck. So, yeah.
Holy cow.
James Harriet ain't got nothing on me. I'm telling you, I could go on with those things. Yeah, that's crazy.
Oh, man.
That's one part of the stories. I always tell the students you should keep a diary because in 10 years, you could write your own All Creatures Great and Small. It's just a crazy business.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show. This was fantastic. I know that our audience got a kick out of it and learned quite a bit. Greg, of course, thank you for facilitating this, doing all this. And I know that you guys didn't talk a whole lot about business, but it probably, made people think about their own journey, their own second chapter. So if people are interested in talking more, how do they get a hold of you, Greg?
So if anybody wants to talk to me, they can reach out to me at greg@dupontwealth.com. It's DuPontWealth.com.
Fantastic.
They can also reach me by phone the old-fashioned way, 614-408-0004.
All right. Well, again, gentlemen, thank you so much for the show today. And of course, our last thank you goes to the listening audience. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to Your Financial Advocate with Greg DuPont. If you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, please click the subscribe now button below. This way, when Greg comes out with a new podcast, it'll show up directly on your listening device. And we humbly ask that you share this podcast, rate it, and leave a review, as this does actually help other people find the show. Again, thank you so much for listening today. For everyone at DuPont Wealth Solutions, this is Eric Johnson reminding you to live your best day every day. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to Your Financial Advocate. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of DuPont Wealth Solutions. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning.